In this video, we will go over why I won't sell my GH5 for the A7S III. What's up everybody, I'm Jake McHugh and this channel is all about making better videos. I do gear reviews and test videos to help you determine what gear you need to make the videos you want to achieve. If that's something that may interest you, consider hitting that subscribe button down below. While this channel is mostly Micro Four Thirds content, that doesn't mean I favor or am partial to one company's camera versus another. For example, I do own the GH5, but I also do own and use the Sony A6400 as well. I use what checks the most boxes for me and what I can afford at this time. With that being said, the Sony A7S III is a game changer to the market, and I would love to be able to use or own one someday, possibly. When comparing this camera to, let's say, the GH5, for example, you really have to consider if it's really worth the huge jump in price for the line of work that you are doing. If you are someone who runs a production company and this is your full-time income, then maybe that is the case to buy a camera of that price. But for someone like myself, where I have a small YouTube channel, the GH5 really does cover me for most situations. When you are someone that does this more as a side gig or you have a small budget to spend on camera gear, the GH5 is pound for pound the better value for the money, in my opinion. Considering the starting price of roughly $3,500 for just the body for the Sony A7S III, you could get a GH5, the Panasonic 12-35 and 35-100mm F2.8 Mark II, the Godox SL-60 for a key light with a C-stand and softbox, and a higher quality mic like the Deity D3 Pro. And this is if you're buying everything at retail price and not used. You could also get a lot more out of this kit if you don't go with the two expensive zooms that I mentioned. I mentioned these because they offer the most versatility at a fixed aperture. In the great review done by Gerald Undone, he suddenly mentions a few things in comparison to the GH5 with the Sony A7S III. Not that he is saying that they stole the ripped off Panasonic, but I found that it's really interesting that we are getting excited about some things with the Sony A7S III that are already found in the GH5. For example, he mentions how the mic jack on the camera is out of the way for the flip out screen, just like the GH5. And this is a great design that I've come to appreciate every time that I use this camera. The Sony A7S III is the first mirrorless camera from Sony that can shoot in 10-bit 422, and this is up to 120 frames per second in 4K. While this is super nice to have, you have to question yourself if you would really need it or use it, and you have to consider the massive storage that this would take up, and if your computer system could even handle it. I think that in most situations, people really only need 10-bit 422 in either 24 or 30 frames per second, as these are the most common frame rates, obviously. And that is something that the GH5 has been able to do since it came out in 2017. Speaking of high frame rates, the GH5 can shoot in 60 frames per second in 4K and 180 frames in 1080p. And this is pretty good considering its age, as it was one of the first mirrorless cameras to shoot in 4K 60. Another advantage the GH5 has is in size, and this isn't so much the case when we're talking in terms of the camera body itself, but when it comes to the lenses. When comparing, let's say, the 12-35 f2.8 from Panasonic, this lens is tiny compared to its full-frame counterpart from Sony, which is the 24-70mm. And this allows you to either pack more gear when on the go or have a slightly smaller setup when shooting in run and gun situations. While it sounds like the IBIS is better when it comes to the A7S III compared to the older Sonys, Gerald also makes the comment on how it isn't the same level as Panasonic yet. The GH5 is one of the best cameras when it comes to image stabilization, and when it's paired with lenses like I mentioned earlier, you get what is called dual IS, and this is where the lens and the camera works together to give you the smoothest image possible, and this is a dream when shooting handheld. He also mentions in the video about how the new menu systems on the A7S III have this vertical cascade tiles like Panasonic as well, and this is huge for Sony because I, for one, preferred other menu systems over Sony's in the past. While the Sony A7S III does have a bunch of upgrades from its older models, the GH5 has some of the features that people are getting excited about in the new Sony camera, and the GH5 has been going on 4 years old and is much more affordable. You may wonder why I haven't really talked about the Canon R5 or R6 in this video and comparing it to the Sony and the GH5, and that is for a few reasons. I feel like both the GH5 and the A7S III are more video-centric cameras, which I prefer more, and Canon is still more of a photo-first camera in my opinion. Along with this whole overheating issue, and does it really overheat, does it not, and something about putting tape on a battery so it doesn't overheat. Personally, if you are spending that kind of money, I feel like you shouldn't have to worry about this issue, but that's just me. Again, at the end of the day, it really comes down to what checks off most of the boxes for your needs while still being in your price range, and that for me is still the GH5. The Sony A7S III is a great camera, and anyone that can afford it should seriously consider getting it. And if Sony were ever to reach out to me and have me try the A7S III, I would take them up on that offer in a heartbeat. We also need to consider that for those of us who can't spend that kind of money on a brand new camera, that in a few years we'll have an amazing selection of gear available to us on the used market once these newer cameras become a bit older. Let me know down in the comments below about your thoughts about the GH5 versus the Sony A7S III. And if you're not a GH5 owner, let me know what your thoughts are about the Sony A7S III and if it's a big enough upgrade for you to leave your current camera system and jump to Sony. So that's going to do it for this video here. I hope you guys enjoyed it and got something out of it. If you like this video, make sure you hit that thumbs up button down below. Subscribe if you haven't already, and make sure you hit the bell. That way you get notified when I drop future videos just like this one here. And last but not least, I will catch you guys in the next video. Peace.